Hello everyone and welcome to the November subscription coffee tasting video where I'm going to taste the 3 coffees we're sending out on the first Wednesday of November to all the coffee subscribers around the world. Yes, if you live in the US for instance, you can subscribe to our coffee. And also Norwegians for sure, we send out to a lot of Norwegians, so it takes about 2-3 days for you to get the coffee from when we send it to get it to the mail. And in the US it might take from 1 week to maybe 4 weeks, for instance, depending on the choice of your shipment, of course. Cool, we're sending out 3 coffees every month, normally, sometimes a little bit more, but always minimum 3 different coffees. So if you subscribe to 1 bag, you will get the first coffee we're sending out. And if you subscribe to 3 bags, you will get 1 of each of these coffees. And you can subscribe up to 6 bags, so that means you would get 2 of the each bag, for instance. I select the coffees every month, and I actually do taste all the coffees we have, or most of the coffees we have, regularly, and then select the coffees that I feel are tasting at its best at any given moment. So sometimes, for instance, if I have a Geisha or a Kenyan coffee, and it's very fresh, it might not taste at its best immediately. So maybe we'll wait a couple of months before we release it, and then the coffee will taste a lot better. And we do actually buy coffees exclusively for subscription sometimes, because we know how many kilos it is, so that means we can buy smaller lots of coffee that are specially kind of bought for the subscription program. So if you want to learn more about our subscriptions, then go to our website. The one we're talking about today is the one called Tim's Choice, where I choose the coffees and we send out the first Wednesday every month. But you can also choose your own subscription, where you subscribe to any coffee, any frequency, and also how many kilos you want. Cool, let's get started on tasting the coffees, because we are tasting 3 different coffees from one single farm today. And I think that is a very fun exercise, because it's quite educational if you can taste differences in cultivars from one particular farm. And the farm we're talking about today is the Los Pirineos farm in El Salvador. And you may know that my dear friend Gilberto Baraona, who used to run this farm, he passed away a few years ago. But his son and his daughter is carrying on his legacy, and they are producing beautiful coffees. Gilberto was a fan of planting many different varieties. And finally, we are able to get some of these cultivars and offer them to you. So today we're tasting one of his kind of traditional ones, and then we're tasting 2 of his kind of new ones that he planted. And I've been waiting so long to get these and to be able to sell them. Let's get started. So the first coffee we're sending out is probably the cultivar that made the farm Los Pirineos famous, and it's the Pacamara cultivar. Pacamara is a crossing between Maragogipe, which is a Brazilian cultivar. It is a big plant with big beans, big leaves, and everything. And then it's crossed with a El Salvadoran cultivar called Pacas, which is a small tree. It yields quite a lot and has normal sized beans. And kind of Pacamara is somewhere in between, and it has a good quality and can taste really, really good, but there are also Pacamaras that can taste a little strange. This one is for sure one of the better tasting ones, I think, that I have tasted, and that's why Los Pirineos became so famous for their coffees, because his Pacamaras, or Gilberto's Pacamaras, or now Diego and Fabiola's Pacamaras, they have been awarded many, many times in the Cup of Excellence and been top 10 coffees in that competition many, many years. So I think Gilberto, before he died, he was the most awarded farmer in El Salvador. Now this particular Pacamara is actually a honey processed. And we don't buy a lot of honey processed coffees, but at Los Pirineos they actually don't have water. It's a volcano, and the farm is on top of the volcano, so they don't have a water source there. So what they have to do is to collect the rainwater in a big pool, so to say, and they use that water for processing. And so they are doing mechanical demucilage removal. That means they use kind of a centrifuge to remove the mucilage from the coffee beans, and they can vary how much mucilage they want. So they can remove, say, 90%, which is probably the most. And those coffees we call semi-washed. And then you have honey process, where you maybe just depulp the coffee and you leave all the mucilage on, or you can remove maybe 50% of it. This particular one is what they call a black honey, and it doesn't mean necessarily that it has more mucilage, but they have a kind of a recipe where they dry the coffee in shade for a few days, where they don't stir the coffee. And then after a while they start stirring the coffee, and then the mucilage turns black on the beans, and it's supposed to give a slightly different flavor. For me, the reason why I bought this was because it didn't have a lot of these kind of ferment and pulpy flavors that you tend to get in honey processed coffee. So for me this was a much cleaner version of a honey processed coffee with a very smooth and heavy body, and still with this kind of Pacamara fruit flavor, which is quite hard for me to define because I haven't eaten a lot of fruit that tastes like this. So some kind of a tropical fruit, guanabana if you are in Colombia, for instance, or if you live in Norway, probably you would just say stone fruit. You know, flavor notes are quite personal, and it's kind of reflecting what you have been eating through your whole life. So different cultures, different people have different references when they refer to flavor notes. So that's why I'm sort of a little bit more vague sometimes when I describe fruit flavors, because I haven't really tasted a fruit that it tastes exactly like these Pacamaras. But for me, definitely this kind of fruitiness you get in stone fruits, very kind of sweet and ripe and juicy fruits. It's quite a big body, so that means a good solid mouthfeel. And of course, all the coffees from Los Pirineos has this kind of baseline flavor that is like very sweet, dark chocolate. Yeah, super sweet, big body, juicy, ripe fruit, but you have to define what kind of fruit flavor it is yourself. So that's the Pacamara, large beans coming from Los Pirineos, and probably his most famous coffee. And I think it's the coffee that he produces the most, or they produce the most at this farm. Now the second coffee is kind of special to me because I have the same cultivar planted on my own farm in Colombia. And Gilberto called this coffee Konka, and it's an Ethiopian cultivar. I'm not sure where he got the seeds. Probably it's from the Procafe research plot that he had on his farm, which means it was the El Salvadoran research organization researching different cultivars, and they were actually developing some of these Pacamaras on Gilberto's farm. So this is an Ethiopian cultivar, and the same that I've planted on Finca El Suelo in Colombia. But to my surprise, it doesn't taste a whole lot of Ethiopian coffee. I actually believe that it tastes a little bit more Ethiopian on my farm, but doesn't mean that it's not delicious. This coffee is really, really it has a very juicy, fruity character, a little bit less chocolatey than the Pacamara, and a little bit higher acidity. But it's like really refreshing and delicious. Also a little bit harder to describe the fruit flavor, probably a little bit stone fruit again. Just feels like really ripe fruit, and also a little bit maybe more like milk chocolate rather than the dark baking chocolate that this coffee has. Yeah, apples maybe. Yeah, feels like eating nectarines, something like that. Very juicy, still with this kind of nice texture. It reminds me of this kind of milk chocolate with a little bit of fruit in it. So, to be honest, I don't really know what type of cultivar this is. My plan is to take some leaf samples from my own plants and then send it into the World Coffee Research to get them analyzed to see what they actually are. But we can call them Konka for now, because that's what Gilberto named it. So that's the second coffee we're sending out, Ethiopian landrace cultivar, we can say, and the first one was the Pacamara. Now the third one probably is the more famous one around the world today, and it's a Geisha cultivar. And I know Gilberto got these seeds through Panama, and he planted some seeds in his house in San Salvador, and a few of those trees grew quite fast, and then he took all the seeds from them and then planted on his farm. And then he has been selecting the best trees, and also based on quality, we've been cupping these different geishas for many, many years. And I know he was selecting the seeds from the best trees all the time. So this has become quite a distinct coffee, but bear in mind this is planted on 1,400 meters in El Salvador and not at 2,000 meters in Panama. So the character is very, very different from a Panamanian geisha. And it's quite a fun coffee to taste. Because it has this kind of tangerine flavor that is quite distinct, and also chocolate flavor. So it reminds me a lot about eating chocolate with orange flavor. You know those chocolates that you can buy, orange flavored chocolates? But it also has this kind of herbalness that you get in tangerines, which is kind of this almost like blackcurrant bush kind of flavors, if you know what that is. And quite distinct. Now, we didn't buy a lot of this geisha, so we didn't have enough to send out to everyone. So this is for the ones who subscribe to 3 or more bags. They will get a taste of this beautiful geisha from Los Pirineos in El Salvador. So Pacamara, Konka or Ethiopian, and then geisha, which is, I know the seeds are from Panama for sure. Cool, I really hope you enjoy these coffees. For me, these are really comforting. Now in November, you know, it's a little bit colder. This is really the type of coffee that I really enjoy drinking in the morning while I watch my sourdough bread rise in the oven. Isn't that beautiful? Hope you enjoy them as much as I do, and hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching.